Not a week goes by without another report of bad news in the cryptocurrency world. Funds get lost, stolen, or compromised with little or no hope for recovery. Blockchains are safe by design, but there's always a weak link, and that, of course, is the human being. This brings us to a need for a better, more flexible, and more secure ways of holding digital assets. To examine the different solutions, challenges, and opportunities, as well as the future of crypto custody, in conversation with Danielle Tichner of WSource, please welcome to the stage the founder of Tabookey, Liraz, Siri, and the founder of Trustology, Alex Batlin, and of course, the president of Ledger, Pascal, Gauthier.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today in this crypto custody panel. I want to start by telling you that it's a completely decentralized panel par excellence, because everyone here has a different opinion. So the purpose of this panel is to share some facts and figures and opinions and enable you to make your own, to have an idea about crypto custody, where it's all going and where it stands right now. Liraz, I would like to ask you to put your hacker's hat for a second. Thank you. There's this statement right now. Many people are saying that blockchains are secure by definition, and any breach of security is due to human manipulation. Is that statement correct? And how would you define crypto custody?
All right. Well, that's kind of a confusing statement, because the guarantees that blockchains make for security are at the protocol level. But so in the middle of the system, you might get certain guarantees, but really you're pushing security to the edges where security still needs to happen. And issues like key management are still very much a concern for most users who don't have a background in security, don't know how to do that. It's a big challenge. So saying blockchain is secure, I mean, secure against what? You really have to understand the nature of security to have a good discussion about that. And I would say for most people that are using the blockchain right now, we've seen what catastrophic consequences can be if you don't really understand what type of security you're getting when you're using the blockchain and what you're trading off, and what be your own bank is a challenge for most users. The answer is it depends. It can be secure, but the challenges are different than in a centralized system that is under the central control of a single authority that is taking care of security for you, like your bank. It's a very different type of system.
Right. So crypto custody, in your opinion, how would you define it?
So I think crypto custody is really about solving two problems. One problem, there are two major pain points for institutions, and we are talking about mostly an institutional market, or will be an institutional market in the future. So the first thing is that most organizations and most people, they're not security experts, they don't have security expertise, and this is a real challenge when you have to be your own bank, right? So how do you handle things like key management? Later I'll talk about why that's actually a bit of a paradox, which is hard even for security experts to figure out. So that's one problem. You're outsourcing your security needs to somebody else, basically. The other part of it is that custodian in the traditional financial world, it's a reserved word. It means that I am holding other people's assets, and I potentially have an incentive to steal them, right? So the regulator steps in and you say, well, to prevent you from stealing, you have to be transparent to a custodian. It will make sure that all of your assets, what you're reporting is actually true, and you're providing transparency using a third party. It's a way of reducing the amount of trust that we place in just the custodian, the holder of the assets, like an asset management firm. This is what custodian means in the traditional financial world.
Thank you. Thank you. As we have followed recently the hype of many different entities jumping on crypto custody, there's a big importance of crypto custody right now for adoption for institutionals. I would like to ask you, Pascal, as a pioneer of crypto custody for individuals, where do you stand right now in terms of institutional custody? What are the facts of figures of what is available right now and what is in the works?
Yeah, so hi everyone. It's great to see that there are so many people at this panel and paying attention to crypto. So we're at Ledger. At Ledger, we build security for cryptocurrencies, but what we do basically is we protect private keys. I always start this by asking the audience, can you please raise your hand if you have bought one of our products, the Ledger Nano S?
Woo.
Okay. Well, that's good. So thank you very much. And for the others, come see me after the show. I need to explain to you why you need to buy one. Okay.
Facts and figures?
So facts and figures. Look, crypto, I started with retail. It's actually one of the first products in history that I started with, a financial product that I started with retail. And interestingly enough, retail had an edge to come into this market because retail, people, us, we have more appetite for risk when it comes to our money than a big institution. In 2014, 15, 16, even 17, big institutions didn't want to hear about crypto. But then something happened where crypto went from sub 100 billion in valuation to almost 1 trillion in valuation, sort of overnight. A bit overheated. Right now, it's actually come back down to 200 billion, but to demonstrate that this actually could become a big asset class. And interestingly, what has happened is most institutional players went from saying that they will never touch the asset because it was toxic to actually starting building technology and businesses around that asset class. So there's not one conversation that we have with big institutions in 2018 that doesn't lead to something that will be in the market in 2019, 2020. So from no one wants to touch it, we want to everyone wants to touch it. The problem for institutions is custodianship, because institutions, what they bear with them is trust. You will give your money to an institution because you actually trust that institution to not lose that money for you. And so therefore, they look at crypto asset as a big risk, because actually, crypto asset is the easiest asset to steal on the planet that was ever created. Some of the people were at the Dropper breakfast the other day. I can see them in the room. And so I told you already, I repeat always the same stuff, huh? And now you know. So it's very difficult to steal other asset classes at scale. If you want to steal gold at scale, oil at scale, you need to take an army and invade a country. Okay, that's what you need to do, because then you want to be able to use the oil and the gold. If you want to steal crypto at scale, you just need to steal private keys. So for banks and for financial institutions, this is very dangerous, and they could lose a lot in that game. And so that's why they're working hard at the custodianship problem, and that's why you've seen in the press Fidelity, State Street, many of the big names announcing that they were going to do something in the field. And typically us at Ledger, we have entered into a partnership with Nomura, which is one of the largest financial institutions in Japan, to build such custodian, a full licensed custodian called Komainu. And we're working on it right now with Nomura and Global Advisors, and it's something that we feel will take to market sometimes in 2019.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. So now you heard the opinion of a hacker. You have the opinion of service provider. It's time to hear an opinion of a banker. Alex, I need you to put your banker's hat. So Alex has a solid banking experience of how many years? Many.
Too many.
Okay, so we would like to hear your perspective as a...
This beautiful young face.
Okay, we won't mention.
Betrays many years.
He has many years of experience, trust me. So Alex, what are the expectations of banks and financial institutions? What is hampering them to move in? What are the parameters we need to deliver to have these people on board? And if you could share a few words about what you have in the works.
Sure. So, kind of, what do banks care about? Banks particularly want to reduce costs right now. And in a post-internet era, when we need to move assets globally, the existing rails are quite inefficient, because most of the existing rails have been built pre-internet, largely speaking. And what do I mean by that? Well, when you look at, say, securities depository, it's always centralized. Why? Because you don't want to outsource your securities depository to another nation, because if you have an argument, the other nation will cut you off. So you don't want to lose your most valuable kind of assets register. So everyone has a local copy. All right, but if you're now trying to issue securities across multiple different jurisdictions, it means you have to list your securities across 20 CSDs. And then you have to have a supranational compute share or something else to manage all of that, multiple custodians, multiple brokers. It's a nightmare. Blockchain, for the very first time, gives you ability to create a global backbone, which is both local and global. And I'm not doing an ad for HSBC here, but it's true. So if you have an argument, you still have a local copy, but it's also kind of centralized logically, which is pretty cool. So a lot of people are seeing this as a massive cost save, especially in the post-internet age. So that's what most people are interested in. They're not so interested in the unregulated asset classes. They're not so interested in censorship-free, quite the opposite. You want KYC, you want AML, but you want those benefits of frictionless value transfer. And the challenges are a little bit different there. You still need to have the private keys because you still have decentralization to give you the frictionless kind of global view of this world. But actually you can start introducing recourse. The reason why the risk for banks is a lot less for digital assets as they are today is because, frankly, if you move some money by mistake, there's always an agreement to move money back, pretty much. So I think we will see a divergence of the needs. There still will be the censorship-free networks, which I think are extremely valuable, where it is paramount not to lose the keys, but you will also see many other networks which are kind of permissioned and identifiable, and at that point, actually, you still need key management, but it's a different problem. It's about convenience rather than necessarily this absolute security. So I think both challenges are emerging.
And this is where your solution comes in, and key management side, right?
Yeah, so we're building a key management solution a little bit like you guys, which is scary because they're awesome, but hopefully we'll do something good too. And yeah, so we're looking at key management, whether it's a kind of permissionless blockchain, we'll have the capability to support that because really it's about the signature, or permission blockchains. My background is I helped kind of out of the UBS lab, which I was running a few years ago. We spun out something called utility settlement coin, which is effectively tokenization of central bank money.
Right.
So kind of I've been at the forefront of looking at the problems for the institutional space.
Thank you. So now if anybody was not making a video of this panel, it's time to do it because we're going to heat it up right now. Liraz, can we ask your opinion on what are the current challenges and vulnerabilities of the available custodian solutions?
Sure. So the largest challenge is that people don't really understand what the value proposition of the blockchain is, and they create solutions that sort of short circuits the value proposition. And what I mean by that is there's really no reason to use a blockchain unless you care about decentralization, because centralized systems are much simpler, they have better performance, they have better user experience. So you only want to use a blockchain when you want to decentralize the system and decentralize in a very particular way, so there are no central points of failure in terms of the power structure. That has the ability to come in and intervene. If you look at how the banking system is set up as an alternative, it's centralized, it's hierarchical, and then powerful adversaries, including nation states, they can come in and they can do things like hopefully step in when the circumstances require it from in a good situation. I mean, something bad happened and we just want to reverse it, but possibly also step in just when government wants to be a bit more repressive, as we've seen. This happens in some countries, and this is a big problem because you can solve any issue within a decentralized system by just centralizing that aspect of it. And if you do that, then wait, you're no longer benefiting from the decentralized security the blockchain gets you, and you might also have to pay for the additional complexity. So instead of getting better security, you might actually getting worse security. But that's just the start of it. Just because this is a new technology that's poorly understood, the security failures that we had before, they were just less visible. It's not that there weren't security failures, and And it's not true that security wasn't failing at scale. I mean, even something like stealing gold, that actually did happen at scale after World War I. You know, the US government stepped in and said, like, okay, guys, you can't own gold anymore. And because gold was stored in central repositories, the government could effectively execute that.
Can you give a few specific examples?
Absolutely, absolutely. The first thing just to understand is, in terms of the architecture, you don't have to think about technology at all. Just think about what would be the consequences of storing all the world's gold in one giant vault. Okay, how hard that would be to secure when you have adversaries that include nation states, right? So North Korea stole $550 million worth of cryptocurrency. And there's never been a situation where you as a corporation or you as an institution, you have to think about, hey, are the North Koreans going to hack me, or is a ROG nation state going to be part of my threat model? So that's new, but even before that, we were in a situation where we did have to worry about governments. Just like after World War I, the US government confiscated gold, and the entire fiat system is based on the premise that the government can control the money supply, and blockchain was born as an antithesis to this. Right? That's the only reason the Bitcoin was created in the first place. After 2008, the abuses of too big to fail financial system. And this is what happens when you have centralized control. You create a central point of failure that's too tempting for attackers not to go after it. And it's not just outside attackers, it's also insider threats. Potentially corruption inside the government itself, like we saw in 2008. We have a massive bailout. So that's a big challenge. But at any level that you look at it, there are significant challenges. Key management is a paradox.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to lose the key. You don't want the key to be stolen.
If you take the government out of the equation, what are there specific challenges that
So
these guys are dealing with?
So I come from a security background, and key management is still paradoxical even to me. And it's a really hard problem. You don't want to lose the key on one hand. You don't want the key stolen on one hand. But the engineering strategies you use when you don't want to lose something are to create as many copies as possible. We don't want something stolen. You create as few copies as possible. This is paradoxical. And even I, as a security expert, it's hard for me to know where to put the trade-off. Right? It's really tricky. And it doesn't solve itself magically when you have a centralized provider trying to solve this problem for you. That just hopefully they're a bit more knowledgeable about security. So that's one big challenge.
Right.
The other big challenge is that security itself is something that's very poorly understood by most of the population. People, they think about security as a functional claim when it's not at all a functional claim. If I tell you a car goes 60 miles per hour, you can test that. You can get in the car and drive. If I tell you the car can't be hacked remotely, I'm making a claim that something can't happen. But there's no way to prove that. It's like you can't prove a negative. You can only say, I tried really hard and I didn't manage to succeed. But the Germans in World War II, they encrypted everything with the Enigma. And it turned out that the Enigma wasn't secure and they weren't lacking in resources. They tried attacking the Enigma any way they knew how, but they just didn't have the ingenuity of an Alan Turing and the cryptanalytic techniques. So
we're slightly running out of time. Can I just ask you to suggest a solution to the last one?
Right. So the solution is to embrace blockchain, to embrace decentralization, and to build architectures that provide defense in depth and assume anything that can go wrong will go wrong. We have to create systems that can sort of absorb failure and still survive. And that's a critical part. And the other critical part, it's very simple. Because nobody understands security, we can't expect, and customers right now, they bear the cost of failure. I think we can't live in a world where we expect customers to be able to choose solutions and know what to pay for them. Instead, we have to be in a world where vendors, instead of selling solutions, they're buying up risk, like insurance companies.
Okay.
And then it's their problem.
Got it.
That's honest.
All right, gentlemen, it's all yours. Who wants to speak first? So I would like to ask you to share with us how you are addressing some of the concerns that Liraz has just highlighted.
Go first.
Alex, you want to start? Yeah, all right.
Yeah, so like I said earlier, we do key management. Now, the beautiful thing about blockchain is that the database of records is now decentralized, so it's extremely secure. Unlike normal banks, where the banks have to worry about the end-user security and the record security, blockchain typically solves the problem of record security because it's highly distributed. But what we've done is actually reduce the security for the end user because there's no central authority to reset your password or to provide recourse. So I know it's a little bit paradoxical to provide a centralized system for a decentralized world, and maybe we'll get to the point where we can decentralize everything. But for now, what I think is kind of hopefully a okay-ish balance of very secure record keeping through decentralization, and actually hopefully increasing a little bit the end security of the keys for the individuals, even if you still have centralized risk. It's not perfect, but we know very few people, I don't know anybody else who's figured out a better way. What we do is we keep keys safe on behalf of individuals. We use bank-grade hardware security modules. We use iPhones because it has secure elements. And effectively what you do is you send us an instruction to create private keys inside our data centers. We create those, we compute your address, and we give it back to you. It looks like an Ethereum or Bitcoin address. You can move assets into it, and when you want to move them out, you instruct us through your phone, and we capture your biometrics, as well as your government documents. So we are fully compliant KYC AML with the forthcoming 5th AML directive. And then we move the funds across for you. And then we also have programmable accounts, so you can put your own conditions about movement. So think of it as a smart contract on top of your kind of key safeguarding account. So it's kind of simple. It's actually really complicated under the hood, but it works, and it's pretty awesome. So pretty proud of that.
Thank you, Alex. Pascal, would you like to comment?
Sure.
So
first of all, I'd like to say it's very hard for me to hear anything that you guys are saying. Like, you sound like gods to me, like the sound is coming from
It's true, there is something with the sound.
so that everywhere in the room. It's horrible, and I understand a word out of two of what you guys are saying. So
he was talking
if
about
I don't react, it's
accountability.
normal, it's just I don't understand.
Yes.
So I think you want me to say something. So
I'll guide you. Give us something on accountability, like how you can give additional insurance, so to speak, to the end user.
So look, I think right now I would, we need to understand where this market is and where it needs to be. I think when a market is being created, usually everyone has a tendency to ask everything now. We are very impatient people because technology is fast. So of course technology is fast. So boom, Bitcoin, voila, it works, and it's fantastic. But it's not like that. So Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, all these public protocols actually have a long way ahead, even in terms of the protocol itself, to be really good and to be able to do great things. And even in the way that the private keys are managed, like there's still many things that will happen in the near future and in the long-term future to make this better. Because quite frankly, all of this is very clunky today. You have your private key, you can put it on a piece of paper called storage, etc. All the keywords that you hear today is just a testimony that the technology is not there yet. So we are trying to solve at Ledger the fundamental issue of security and the private key management, and so we provide bricks that can be used by everyone and anyone that wants to secure private keys, whether you're a user, an enterprise, or a machine. But we also feel that we have more to do in the future in terms of protecting these private keys against human errors, because security, you said it before, is not just about the technology, about security. It's also about human errors. It's also about the processes that you put on top. It's also about the interfaces. It's also about education. And all of this will take a long time, so it's okay. So my advice is don't put all your economies in Bitcoin and in one private key that you store God knows where. Use a ledger and give some time to this market to take form and shape.
Thank you, Pascal. Thank you, everyone. So I hope we gave you different accounts, presented some facts and figures of what is happening today in crypto custody, which will enable you to make your own opinion on where it stands and what are the options. If you have any questions, we don't have any time left. I hope that panelists will be available afterwards for some questions.
Sure.
Thank you.
Welcome that way.